evening. It's Dr. Joseph Baker at the Limerick Chiropractic Center, and we're going to be talking about our half an hour to health. Welcome to Better Health. And I think one of the very first things that we have to recognize is that our healthcare system is broken. And let me tell you, that simple question at the bottom, are you okay with that, is so very important, because if you're okay, you want to stop watching now. But if you're not okay with the fact that, this system of ours is only leading to greater breakdown, more disease, more crisis situations, then you want to stay on board. You want to listen until the end, because you're going to be taking away different things from this conversation tonight that are going to help you understand why it is so important for making those better choices. Now, we have been taught from very, very early on the fact that, hey, listen, if you have no pain, you got no problem. If you feel good, you're healthy. Oh, I'm sorry. You need to shake it off. Suck it up. It'll be okay. Have any of you heard those type of statements made when you're talking about different pains or illnesses, different body signals that you're getting? Well, most of you are out there shaking your head. Absolutely yes. In fact, if you were in the same gym class or had the same soccer coach I did, you heard that on a regular basis. Just shake it off. It'll be okay. And yet, one of the things that needs to be recognized is the fact that, we unfortunately have had these ailments and have had injuries that have left scars behind. And the truth is that, yes, what you don't feel is going to hurt you. What you don't know is going on inside your body is a problem. In fact, if we miss out on listening to our body's signals when it talks to us, then guess what? It's going to scream at you. In fact, for many of you, that's how we came to know each other. Is the fact that you presented in crisis to the Limerick Chiropractic Center. The fact of the matter is that you should have never, ever gotten to that place. If you had ever been taught, if you had ever heard the fact that you need to maintain this body of yours, well, from birth on. Because the better we maintain it, the less likely it is that we're ever going to find ourselves in crisis. In fact, one of the biggest reasons why we end up in crisis is because of a silent killer known as subluxation. And very simply, that's when the bones in the spine come out of their normal position. It puts pressure on the nerve. Whatever's connected to it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Now, I know that is an oversimplified explanation of what a subluxation is. Bone out of place, putting pressure on the nerve. Whatever's connected to it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. See, the problem is that we oftentimes overcomplicate our health. We overcomplicate, the explanations behind it, which means nobody ever wants to dig in and just simply understand, well, what can I do to maintain myself? See, when we create so much confusion from hello as far as what the problem is, the sad thing is people just, they throw their hands up in the air. And yet, if we get to the root cause, if we dial back to why it is that most of these things occur, we recognize the fact that if we're dealing with this one small thing, this subluxation, this bone that's out of place, well, let me think. It solves a whole host of other problems. In fact, I was just describing to a patient earlier how that subluxation, when it happens, biggest problem is the fact that we lose motion. When we lose motion, guess what? Arthritis ends up forming because the joints are jammed together. It's called Wolff's Law. By the way, because those joints are jammed and they're not moving, well, the disc doesn't get fed, because the only way the disc gets fed is through a pumping motion of those joints moving properly. So all of a sudden the disc withers and dies, and the sad thing is that opening that's on the side of the spine that's supposed to be nice and wide, well, it's going to shrink down inside, which means that, all of those nerves that are inside of there are going to get compressed. Those fibers are going to get compressed, and sadly, whatever is connected to the other end, it's not going to work the way it's supposed to. And yeah, we use very expensive tests at times, EMGs, NCVs, somatosensory evoked potential testing in order to put numbers to this. But you know what? It's as simple as, well, if you put your foot on a hose, the water's never going to come out the other end the way it's supposed to. So in turn, we realize that, you know what? Half the battle is understanding more about these subluxations. And when we think about these subluxations, how do they occur? Well, listen, the birthing process is that oftentimes creates the very first subluxations. From there, we live life. If you watch a 2-year-old for just 10 minutes, you're going to figure it out real quickly. How many times do they go up and down? How many times do they trip over their own feet? How many times, as we're learning to ride a bike, do we fall off before we actually get it right? Oh, by the way, if they have siblings at home, sort of like my brothers and sisters, well, you beat each other up, you knocked each other down, you did a whole bunch of other stuff. That's even before we started playing sports in schools, before we had car accidents. The list just keeps going on and on. See, the problem is that we're going to constantly engage in stresses that will cause subluxations. Not just the physical stress, but the mental, the emotional, the chemical stresses that cause our body not to be able to function the way it's supposed to. And yes, we could spend not just hours, but days on each one of these topics as we discuss all of the different ways of how they create problems within our system. It's not what we're going to do tonight. Tonight we're going to continue because we realize that, you know what? Oftentimes we think, this is just a chiropractic thing. And yet, there are medical studies out there. There are demonstrations again and again. And the Windsor study was one of those studies that demonstrates the fact that, hey, listen, when you have a subluxation, yes, it kills. It destroys the organs that are supposed to be keeping your body alive. And yet we've been told, well, if you don't feel it, well, it's not happening. It's not hurting you. Let's remember, cancers and tumors, just like cavities and subluxations and osteoporosis and diabetes, you get no signals in the beginning. There are no warning signs when it's first started. In fact, it's only after it's been going on for quite some time that we experience any type of signal whatsoever. And the sad thing is that even as it's moving forward, what do? We take an aspirin, an Advil, a Motrin, an ibuprofen. Then we have an anti-inflammatory when it gets bad enough because, we need a little bit more. When it gets bad enough, well, we're just going to stick a needle in it and deliver a cortisone shot so that we can stop the inflammation. Well, the list just keeps going on and on. Increasing the level of severity of the toxin that's being, used on our body to try and knock out a signal. And in the end, the problem is that, well, as we're trying to fight a mechanical problem using a chemical, doesn't change the mechanical problem. That means that the problem just continues to worsen with time. See, only 10% of your body can even transmit a pain signal. So by the time you get that signal, already significant damage has happened. Most patients who enter our office that have had pain for any length of time, unfortunately, there are significant changes inside the spine. The arthritis, the degeneration, the calcium deposits, the spurs, the loss of the disc, that's all happened. And one of the things that oftentimes occurs, as we're talking about not only what the problem is, but also what the solution is us wrapping our head around what is health. Because oftentimes as we talk about health is, one of those things that most people believe it's just feeling good. It's being able to do the things I want to do. Well, that's wonderful, but you know what? It really doesn't define what health truly is. Now, this comes from Dorland's Medical Dictionary. I do like this definition. Health is a state of optimal mental, physical, and social well-being, and not merely an absence of disease or infirmity. So you're going to forgive me that, already within the medical society, this is what they use to teach nurses, They recognize it takes more than one thing to be healthy. It also requires more than an absence of pain. And as good as this definition is, I like this. I like Webster's dictionary even better. For the purpose of it quantifies. It puts a number on it. It's not enough that we work and that we're able to work at 25, 35, 40%. That's not important. We need to actually be operating at 100% of our ability in order for us to be achieving a state of health. Now, let me just clear one thing up for you. Because I have patients who walk in all the time and they tell me, hey doc, I am a healthy person. And they're taking 2, 3, 4 medications. So let's just clear this up right away. If you're taking medications, you're not healthy. Your system is broken. Things are not functioning the way they're supposed to. And the medication, although it's removing some of those body signals, it's getting rid of the symptoms, it's not dealing with the root cause of the problem. See, the sad thing is if we're not doing our part in this process, well, our level of health continues to degenerate over time. And yes, there are more than one thing that comes in play when we start talking about health. In fact, if you look at a health wheel, you can see it broken down a lot of different ways. But I'm just going to tell you, for our purposes, we're going to deal with 5 different categories. Exercise, nutrition, rest, positive mental attitude, and a properly working nervous system. And let me tell you, just like spokes on a wheel, if we have one of those things that's missing or not at 100%, is the wheel going to continue to go around? The answer is yes. It'll continue to go around. Is it going to run very smoothly? No. Now let's think of 2 or 3 of those things are not at 100%. Well, all of a sudden, that wheel, the wheels on the bus, they're coming off. And the sad thing is that many Americans are walking around with somewhere around 4.5 chronic disease processes. That means that multiple wheels are broken down and not functioning properly. It means that, unfortunately, they're not dealing with the root cause of why their body is not functioning the way it's supposed to. And the problem is that in the end, oftentimes people start, making changes. They'll change their diet a little bit. They'll start exercising. They're going to get better rest. And see, the problem is that in the end, if they're not dealing with that most important system, that nervous system of them, all of these other things are never going to have the great benefit they could have. Because whenever we look at a vital needs chart and we look at, what is going to cause our body to break down the quickest, an improperly functioning nervous system is all the way at the very top. Everything else pales in comparison. If our nervous system is cut off from the rest of the body, guess what? Stuff dies immediately. As opposed to things like food, where you can go weeks without eating food, and guess what? You'll still survive. Maybe not very well, but you'll still survive. But the nervous system, that's the master system of the body. And just to remind you, this master system, it was the very first system in our body to form. It was responsible for actually forming every other system in the body. And that's not a chiropractic thing. You go to Gray's Anatomy, and it's exactly what they tell you. It's Embryology 101. And the last time I checked, that hasn't changed in all of recorded time. In fact, it not only controls that entire body of yours, it also is what heals this body of yours and protects you from disease, viruses, bacteria, germs. It does all of that. And all of that information flows from above down and then the inside out. Everything starts at that brain, goes down through your spinal column, courses through those nerves throughout your entire body, feeding it with the information that it needs in order to function the way it's supposed to. The problem is that 90% of the interference that ever occurs in our nervous system happens in this spine of ours. And yet, most people, they've never had the system checked. They have no idea how this most important system is actually functioning. So tonight, listen, if we talk about keys to success of, how do we achieve better health? How do we raise ourselves up? Well, it's not hard. The formula is actually quite simple. First things first, make sure that you're getting your system checked. Above and beyond anything else. In fact, I know if you're watching this video, the likelihood is you're already a patient at the Limerick Chiropractic Center. The likelihood is that you've already had your spine checked. So the next most right thing is be consistent with your correction. You know what the problem is. The roadmap to better health has already been laid out with the process that needs to take place. You want to be consistent with it. You want to make sure that you're doing your exercises, the tractioning that's required. You want to make sure that you're creating that priority list for yourself so that you're capable of making sure that you're raising yourself up first. Now here's the key ingredient. Before you tell others, oh yeah, by the way, you need to go get checked. By the way, you need to come see my chiropractor. By the way, well, let me tell you. By the way, you need to be the example first. People rely upon you. People rely upon you to demonstrate the fact that chiropractic works. And what type of representation if, in fact, you're not following the recommended protocol in order to raise yourself up as quickly as you possibly can? I'm going to tell you, once you are able to demonstrate the fact that, hey, listen, I was feeling this way, I now feel this way. I was not able to walk up the steps, I can do that now. I can do my own laundry, I can put my own bra on, The remarkable thing are those type of changes are what others not only see, but they want to hear about. How chiropractic has changed your life. And once you've done that, then help somebody else out by making that simple recommendation of go get checked. See, oftentimes people ask, can chiropractic help this? Does chiropractic help that? Well, all of those questions are maybe. That's the answer to them. Maybe. No doctor of chiropractic is clairvoyant. The one thing that we do know is the fact that the body always works better without these subluxations. So if in fact subluxation is present, the one thing that we recognize is that your level of health goes up incrementally as we're removing these subluxations. It's pretty simple. We already have research. It's already out there. We recognize that the biggest challenge that people have is overcoming that fear of stepping through the door and just simply getting checked. I'm going to encourage you to be that example. To be the example for others in your community. So that you give them the opportunity of seeing and experiencing the hope that chiropractic gives to each and every one of us. Here at the Limerick Chiropractic Center, our purpose is to educate and adjust as many families to optimal health using chiropractic care. One family at a time. In fact, I am going to want to make sure that each and every one of you sees that your family's going to get checked. Because we know subluxation patterns do run in families. Yes, we look like our parents on the outside, we look like them on the inside too. We recognize that in the end, we're not here for ourselves. We need to be here in order to help lift up others. And sometimes that biggest question is just simply by asking yourself, what do I know that others don't? As always, I'm going to ask you to do three things. I'm going to ask you to make sure that you like this video, share it on your Facebook account, and also in the comment section, leave us a comment. Your takeaway from this conversation tonight. What's the one thing that you learned from this conversation this evening that you didn't know before? Or maybe that you want to share with others? Questions that you have. We look forward to your comments. I'm Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limerick Chiropractic Center.